Hello and welcome to an episode of Historically Marked. I am Jason in Pontiac, Illinois, and this is another Abraham Lincoln related episode. And I'm going to show you a couple looking for Lincoln markers. There are about 8 or 10 of them here in town, but I'll show you two that are worth doing a video on, and they're very historical in a way. Abraham Lincoln has been here in times in death and during his life. So that is the courthouse for Livingston County. But I'm going to go ahead and show you Abraham Lincoln did sleep here somewhere on this site on a log cabin, and they know because this is a riverbed, and that's what they consider the old Pontiac Trail, which is now Old Route 66. Here's a marker that talks about where Lincoln slept. So Lincoln was in Pontiac May 18th and 19th in 1840 for the first term of circuit court in Livingston County. I'm not going to read this whole marker, don't worry. He came on horseback, drenched to the skin by a spring shower. Tall and lanky, with pants too short for his frame, his shawl clipped with a safety pin, Lincoln was a sorry sight. Judge Treat, who is this guy right here, Lincoln and other attorneys, including David Davis and Stephen A. Douglas, crossed the open prairie from Bloomington in buggies and on horseback, following what later became known as the Pontiac Trail, and much later Route 66. Weather often posed problems for the circuit riding attorneys as they encountered heat, cold, storms, prairie fires, floods, and even snakes to wild animals. And then it says here, when Abraham Lincoln rode into Pontiac that rainy day, he found few cabins, and those were so scattered and hidden among the clumps of bushes that they were rendered almost invisible. Lincoln stayed overnight in a log cabin built on this riverbank site by C.H. Perry to serve as both store and dwelling. Perry hauled the first stock of goods from Pekin to Pontiac by ox team in 1836. And I'm not going to read the rest of it, but I'm going to show you something else that represents the historicness of the site. And this is believed to be the site where Lincoln and Douglas first debated. So that is the Vermilion River. Looks nice. I know we had a recent snowstorm 2 weeks ago and it's still somewhat iced over. So I'm going to go ahead and show you, read off most of this marker. So we all know Lincoln and Douglas, they were political foes. They faced off each other in later years in 1858 and 1860, and both winning elections. But Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas, young attorneys who had faced each other earlier in Livingston County's first court case, later the same day, debated political issues at this very site. At the Old Settlers meeting held in Fairbury in 1877, Judge W.G. McDowell said of it, "They spoke in the street, or rather open prairie. From the top of a dry goods box, Judge David Davis of Bloomington was also there as one of the prominent attorneys. The judge and all attorneys came across country from Springfield and Bloomington in buggies and on horseback. Circuit courts seldom lasted over 1 or 2 days at each term." It talks about a little bit of the history of Pontiac. Like at the time, it was sparsely inhabited, just a handful of horses on the untamed prairie, but it was still being settled. But the residents, they listened attentively as 31-year-old Abraham Lincoln and 27-year-old Stephen A. Douglas debated issues of the day. Little could they realize they were witnessing the birth of a historical era where two thoughtful men would grow in their opposing beliefs on the morality of slavery and their ability to persuade others to accept those beliefs. As they gathered that evening by this river site, they could not have possibly envisioned that just 18 years in the future, 1858, these same two men would be vying to represent Illinois in the United States Senate, and in 1860 would be the Republican and Democrat candidates for the presidency of the United States. Wow. But nor could they have foretold that the Lincoln-Douglas debates would continue to be studied and enacted by historians in centuries to come. And then it talks about down here in 1840, jurors retired to this spot by the Vermilion River and deliberated a case they had heard in a small makeshift courtroom in Henry Weed's cabin. Lincoln was serving as attorney for William Popejoy Jr. Popejoy was seeking $2,000 in damages, claiming Isaac Wilson had publicly accused him of stealing meat from Sarah McDowell. Wow, times have changed. But Wilson pled not guilty, but later withdrew his plea, confessed judgment, and Popejoy remitted the amount. This wasn't the first time that the two men faced off. Earlier, Wilson allowed Popejoy to ride his horse from Money Creek to Bloomington and back. Popejoy agreed to care for, feed, shod the horse, and to pay Wilson $1, but failed to take care of the horse, and the horse died. And yeah, Popejoy retained Lincoln, and Wilson retained Stephen A. Douglas for both cases. And like the Route 66 ones, they have like a passport rubbing marker for those who like to do that kind of thing, but I'm not good at rubbing those things, if you know what I mean. But yeah, very cool that I'm standing in a spot where, yeah, history marked, or history happened rather.